Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session on the 5 fundamental principles of Athenian democracy. We're pleased to have with us Chrys from the UF Classics Department. Chrys studied classics at the University of Ioannina. I didn't say that correctly, I'm sure, Chrys. Close enough. And earned an MA and a PhD degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. His interests vary from Roman and ancient Greek science to modern Greek linguistics, history, and politics. He's published reviews and articles in various journals and has presented papers at various international and national conferences. At UF, he teaches courses on modern Greek language and literature, as well as modern Greek history, Greek identity, and the continuity of Greek civilization from ancient to modern times. Currently, he serves as co-director of the Center for Greek Studies at UF. Students note that his lectures are engaging and that he brings enthusiasm and knowledge to his material. I can vouch for his very high overall ratings on his teaching because I'm a retired member of the University of Florida Classics Department, and proud to be so. Thanks, Chrys, for taking time out from your busy schedule to come and chat with us about a topic with current implications. Yes, the Greeks invented the idea of democracy and the word for it, and their system has influenced political thought ever since. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Chrys.
Thank you, Sheila. Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to be here and to present this talk to you. It's my fourth time, I think, that I've been presenting a talk here at the Oak Hammond, and it's always a great pleasure. So the topic that I will discuss with you today is the Athenian democracy, and there are two parts in this presentation. So part one will be a historical overview of the establishment of democracy in ancient Greece. It's a brand new, very radical system of government, and it's always fascinating to see how that entirely new system that did not exist anywhere on planet Earth became a reality in the city of Athens. So we're going to talk a little bit about the background, the history. And then for the second part of the presentation, we will discuss some fundamental principles that the Athenians considered to be essential to the functioning of democracy. And I think that would be something that would be really interesting, because you can always make the connection between the ancient democracy and our modern democracies today, and you can see where they meet and where they drift apart. And maybe, that would be an inspiration to think about our contemporary reality under a different perspective, under a different point of view. Let's see. I need to. There we go. Yeah. Okay, good. So, this will be the first part of my presentation, which we're going to discuss the historical background. So I'm going to give you some basic facts, some basic historical information. It's a very complicated topic, and it's not something that you can examine in all details in a short presentation. As you know, we are going to omit certain things, and we will try not to be too focused on details. But hopefully, you will get a nice idea of the certain developments that took place in the city of Athens in the 5th century BC, and how these events established democracy. Um, there we go. Okay, good. So something important to keep in mind when we think of politics in the ancient Greek world, and this is a very, very interesting difference between the Greek civilization and other civilizations of the Mediterranean. So if you compare the Greeks to the Egyptians, to the Babylonians, to the Sumerians, in terms of the political administration, you will find a very, very interesting difference between the way Greeks look at politics and the way other cultures look at politics. And the important thing here is to realize that the political organization of Greece at that time is organized with these city states. There is no unified Greece, like a today's nation where we have, the country of Greece, or it's just different city states, and they operate politically independently. And you can see here in the map some of these city states. So, for instance, I think I did something, and hold on a second. Let's go back here. I was trying to. There we go. Okay. So what you see here in this map, you see these different divisions with these different colors, and these will be the ancient Greek city-states. So when somebody talks about the city of Athens, which you can see right here, it's not just the city itself, but there is this area where they control, and then you can see Sparta right here, and you can see this area. So that will be the city state of Sparta. This will be the city state of Athens. And these are politically independent. And they're also independent in a lot of different aspects. For instance, they have a different religious calendar. They have cultural differences. They have dialects that they speak, which will be different from this region to this region. So there is a lot of independence, and something that they have in common is that they all reject the idea of monarchy. The idea of monarchy, which is the most common type of government that you have in the ancient world. And again, if you compare Greece with Egypt, if you compare Greece with the civilizations from the Near East, the idea of monarchy is fundamental in the political administration of these cultures. However, in Greece, they entirely reject the idea of monarchy. So none of these Greek states will have monarchy, with the exception of Sparta, which has a very strange system of two kings. And, one king goes and fights in the battlefield and the other stays home. So in case one of them gets killed, the other one still has the control of the city. But generally speaking, we have to realize that they don't really, they don't prefer monarchy. The system that these cities have, more or less, and again, I'm generalizing a little bit for the purposes of this presentation, but the system that it's quite common in all these Greek city-states is aristocracy. And aristocracy really means that we have a group of elite families that they have the political power. And these elite families, they have a mythical, legendary heritage that they can trace back to the heroes of old. And they have control over the political decisions. And that is the system that you see throughout Greece. And what I'm going to try to do in this, first part of the presentation is basically we're going to see how we got from that system of aristocracy, which is quite common in all these Greek city-states here, into a radical new, entirely different system, what we call democracy, that was established here in the city of Athens, in the city-state of Athens. So that's going to be our our first part. Let me see if I can. There we go. I think I need to point it that way to work. All right. So the city of Athens itself, it's a city that goes back to the Bronze Age, and if you think in terms of time, here the chronology timeline, let's say 1200 BC at least, and if not earlier than that. The Greek Bronze Age ends with a destruction, which is kind of a mystery how exactly that happened. There is archaeological evidence that shows that these Greek cities in the Bronze Age were destroyed by fire, and there are different types of, let's say, assumptions that archaeologists and historians are making. Some people talk about natural disasters. Some people talk about invasions of foreign people, social unrest. But long story short, the Bronze Age collapses around 1200 BC. And then we have a short period of 400 years, which goes by the name the Greek Dark Ages, where basically nothing goes on. And then around the 800 BC and 700 BC, life comes back, civilization flourishes again, and we have population expansion. And we'll see why this is important in the establishment of democracy in the city of Athens. But the important social development that takes place in Athens at that time is that we have certain agricultural producers, farmers. They make good money because the population expansion is followed by economic prosperity. And so you have population expansion, you have economic prosperity, and you have a group of agricultural producers who become important in terms of financial status, but they have no role in the politics of the city. So they will become more and more dissatisfied with the system of government of the city of Athens for a variety of reasons. And just to show you, just to tell you an example of that, because it's something that can be a little bit complex to understand the reason why these agricultural producers were so important in the establishment of democracy in the city of Athens. So here's an interesting fact for you. The Greeks did not have a professional army. What does that mean? That means that if you want to fight, and of course you will want to fight because you need to protect your city, they had this concept of the citizen soldier. And this is a private citizen that will fight to defend the city. In order to do that, you have to have wealth and financial means to buy your armor, to buy your sword, to buy your helmet. In the military formation of the ancient Greek warfare, we have a system which is called it's a military formation which is called the phalanx. And basically, what that means in simple English is that I sit here, next to me, there is another warrior. Next to me, there is another warrior. So we are a very close group. I hold my shield with the left arm, and my shield covers half of my body and half of the person who is next to it. So, for instance, the person who sits next to me with his shields protects my right side, and I protect my left side and the right side of the person who is next to me. So, I want you to visualize that, because what that means is that in the same military formation, you have people who are aristocrats and they control the power of the city. These are the people who run the city. But next to them, in the same military formation, you have somebody who is an agricultural producer, has a lot of money, but has absolutely no political power, no role in the decision making. And this is what creates this dissatisfaction in the Athenian society at that time, where these agricultural producers will say, hey, you know what? I'm fighting next to you. I'm giving my life to protect you, and of course, you to protect me. And we all fight for this city. However, I have absolutely no political role in that city. I'm excluded from the decision making just because I don't come from, from these aristocratic families. I'm not an elite. So I'm not an elite. However, we are equal in the battlefield, and I protect you, and you protect me. And I have money, I'm wealthy, but I'm excluded from political power. So this is, where things are going to get a little bit complicated in the city. And it's going to get to a point where the city is going to become, they will get very close to the verge of a civil war. This conflict, this contrast between wealthy agricultural producers and wealthy aristocrats, and the fact that the agricultural producers are excluded from the decision making of that city, will create social conflict. And the city of Athens they will take certain steps to find a solution to this problem, which is an amazing historical fact, because usually if you look at the history of the world, let's say, both ancient and modern, a lot of times when there is a social contrast, when there is a conflict, it was never, or very rarely, it's dissolved peacefully. So the city of Athens, instead of going into a civil war, well, you're going to have these two different groups fighting each other and destroying the city, they're going to go a different route. And that different route is to invent a new type of government that will satisfy both. So these are some of the steps that they have been taking towards this direction. So there is a legendary figure, and I say legendary because we don't really know if this person was, a historical person or a mythical person. Nobody really knows whether Draco, and you are probably familiar with the word draconian today. This is where the word comes from, because Draco was the first legislator of the city of Athens, and he created the first system of legislation. But this legislation was so harsh and so strict, which, this is why we use this particular word today under this particular context. But it's a step forward, because they establish a system of legislation which will create some, some equalization, I guess, into this contrast, into this conflict. At that time, The type of government of the city of Athens, as I said before, is aristocracy. And the way the city is governed is we have these 9 archons, these 9 magistrates. They are elected from the selected group of the aristocratic elite families of the cities. And that's how the city is governed by these particular rulers. The next step to try to find a solution to this problem, which, as I described before, it threatens the stability of the city. It's a problem that creates unrest and the situation escalates. So the next step was for the Athenians to go and consult one of the wise men of the Greeks, who was also an Athenian, a guy named Solon. And the Greeks had traditionally these 7 sages, you can look them up. These were 7, philosophers and intellectuals, and some of them were scientists, like Thales, for instance. They respected them a lot. They were considered them very wise. And one of them was Athenian. It was Solon, who was involved in politics. He was involved also, he was writing poetry, very, very interesting, historical figure. So they approach him and they say, you have to find a solution for our city. There is a lot of dissatisfaction. There is social unrest. You are wise. Give us a solution. And he says, okay, I will draft a new constitution and I will try to solve this problem. And he says, I want you to promise me that you will try to see how this new constitution will work for, let's say, a certain period of time, like 5 years. And, if you don't like it, you can change it after 5 years. So he drafts a new constitution, which is based on a very, very interesting division of the citizens of the city-state of Athens. And I want to make a note here so that we are clear what to be a citizen mean at that time. So to be a citizen of the city of Athens, you have to be male, you have to be 18 years or older, and you have to be free. And you have to have both your parents Athenians. So that means women are excluded, slaves are excluded, alien residents are excluded. So we're talking about a specific group of males. They are free and they are native Athenians. These are the cities, okay? So Solon now, he's going to create this new constitution, which basically what he will do is something which is a little bit unconventional and at the same time controversial. So he will say, I'm going to divide the citizens based on their income. And I will create these 4 classes. And the first class will make, let's say, 500 units of product. The numbers are not important, but he divides, the citizen based on the income. And as you can see here from this chart, the first class, they can participate in the assembly. They also can participate in a council of 400. And they can also become archons, which is these magistrates that are the highest level of administration in the city of Athens. If you are in the second class, so if your income is not 500, it's trying to remember, I think it's like 400. You can still participate in the assembly, you can participate in the council, but you cannot be an archon. If you are in the fourth class, which is the lowest class, again, based on your income, you can be part of the jury for a trial and you can be part of the assembly, but you cannot be part of the council and you cannot be one of the archons. So let's take a look at that a little bit and see what issues that solves and what issues it doesn't solve. If you go back to some of the things I mentioned, the conflict in the city of Athens had to do with the fact that there are rich people who do not have political power because they are aristocrats. And then there are people who are aristocrats and they have political power. So basically what Solon is doing with this division, he says, do you have money? Yes. So you have political power. You can always move from this class to another class, and this is something that they could that can happen. But of course, you can go from class, from the first class to another class, depending on your production. But basically, what he does is he tries to eliminate the power of these elite aristocratic families by bringing a different criterion there, which is an economic criterion. So it doesn't matter who you are, as long as you make money, you can have political power. The problem with this particular division here is basically that he tries to establish a middle way solution. He doesn't want to offend the aristocrats. He does not want to offend the elite, but at the same time, he wants to satisfy the wealthy agricultural producers. So he comes up with this idea of wealth as the main criterion for who will control political power. But nobody is satisfied by that particular constitution. Why? Because if you are an aristocrat, you feel threatened. If you are a wealthy agricultural producer, it happens that you have a terrible winter and your products are getting to a lower class, and then you have absolutely no political power. So you can find yourself from class A to class D, from the first class to the last class, just because something happens and you don't have enough production that year. So long story short, this is not something that is successful, and the city once again gets very close to having a civil conflict because nobody's happy. And the tension and the dissatisfaction of the Athenian society is still there. So here, it's basically a little bit more complicated in terms of how that constitution worked. Like I said, I don't want to spend too much time giving you, details that probably are not necessary for you to understand what I'm saying here. But we're going to go to the next and final step of Athenian democracy. So this man here by the name Cleisthenes is the founder of democracy. So if somebody asks you, and says, who invented democracy? It was Cleisthenes. It's fascinating because we have a name, a historical person, and we know that he created democracy. So who is this guy? Who is Cleisthenes? He is an aristocrat himself. And that is very, very important to realize what this man did, because he went against his own class. He went against the aristocrats to establish a new type of government in the city of Athens, which we will call democracy. The actual word comes from two Greek words, the word demos, which means the people, and kratos, which means power. So the name they gave to this new type of government was power to the people. The people are important. And the people are not those who have money or those who have an elite background. Everybody becomes the people. So what Cleisthenes did, and again, I don't want to get into a lot of these details because it can get really technical and confusing, but, feel free to ask me questions if you have. Basically, what happens here is you see this is the city-state of Athens. The main city is right here, but there are all these settlements, these little towns, these villages all over. And so the first thing that he will do is he will divide the city-state of Athens into three regions. And he will say region number one is right here, the main city. Region number two will be the areas which are on the coast. And region number three will be the mountains and people who live up in the mountains. Because if you look at the geography of Athens, here is the sea, but there are some mountains in this region. So basically he says, okay, I'm going to divide that into these three regions. Then he says, I'm going to divide that into, let me show you that here, which probably explains a little bit better what he did. So you have three administrative divisions: the city, the hills, and the coast. Each of these divisions is divided into 10 additional divisions. So for instance, right here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 division, another 10 from the hills, another 10 from the coast. Then he will create 10 tribes, which will be represented in the council. But what is interesting here is to realize, and again, I don't want to get too technical, and it's something which is complicated, but basically what I need to tell you, and I think this is something that everybody will understand, is that these 10 tribes, the members of these 10 tribes some of them, they come from the city, some of them, they come from the hills, and some of them, they come from the coast. So what does that mean? Let's say there is somebody who is a fisherman. He is fishing, he has a little boat and he's doing fishing. And then there is somebody who is up in the mountains and he has animals, goats up in the mountain. And then there is another guy from the city who is an aristocrat. And he lives in a very nice, easy life in the city. All of them will be part of the same group. They will be brothers. They will be equal. And this is how he overcomes this problem of how we can bring these different groups in the city together through this system. So that is, the democracy, which is an amazing way to run a city. It's what we call direct democracy. Direct democracy versus representative democracy. I don't need to tell you what's the difference. In direct democracy, you vote directly about issues that have to do with the city. In representative democracy, you elect somebody to represent you for a certain period of time, and then you renew your trust or not. So this is the population of Attica, of the city-state of Athens. There are a lot of foreigners, there are a lot of alien residents. They are not included in this system. You have the Athenians, who are both men and women. Women are not included in this system. And we have this group of citizens, free men of 20 years old and over. So the number is approximately, let's say, between 30,000 and 60,000 people. So the main drawbacks of the Athenian democracy, you can argue that it excludes a lot of members of the society. Women do not participate. Slaves do not participate. Alien residents do not participate. But those who participate, which are these citizens here, they have an amazing type of government that emphasizes equality, direct decision making. Every decision that the city has to take, it will be presented to the people, to the assembly. Everybody is allowed to speak. They have this very important idea, which is called isigoria, which means that all opinions are valuable and everybody can raise their hand and say, I want to say something, and they're going to listen to you. They also have a very, very interesting system of electing the administrators. Think about it. If we are all equal, does it matter who is going to be the administrator? No. So what shall we do? We can have a lottery system and we elect administrators through this lottery system. This is something that drives anti-democrats in Athens, drives them crazy. Like people like Plato and Aristotle, they will say, how can you do something like that? You elect your officials through a lottery system? That makes absolutely no sense. You have to find who is the best. But the Athenians do not care about that because we are all equal. And since we're all equal, we don't want somebody who has the money to run for office and to overshadow somebody else who doesn't have the financial means to run for this office. So the whole system is a lottery system. I know I have a limited time and I can't really, give you all the details, but let me summarize very, very briefly for 1 minute what I just said. And then I want to see some of the fundamental principles of Athenian democracy, which would be an interesting discussion. And when do I need to finish my talk? Okay, so I have 10 more minutes. Okay, very good. So, so what we have here is a radical new system of government, that every citizen is equal, every citizen has the freedom of speech, every citizen can qualify for being an official because your name can pop up and you become the next minister of religious affairs. And also every citizen participates directly in the decision making. So before a decision is taken, they need to vote for this particular decision. And during this process, every opinion is presented, any argument is made, and then there is a vote. So let me discuss now for the last 10 minutes some important fundamental principles that make this system work for the Athenians, and something that you can always consider and think about in terms of our modern democracy. And what I want you to think about is whether these things that I'm going to present to you could work today or could not work today, or they are valuable or they have absolutely no merit. But it would be interesting to make the connection between the old and the new. So the first important thing is that the Athenians believe that every citizen is intelligent enough so that they can make sound decisions about themselves and the others. They believe in rationality. They believe in the power of your ability as a human being to know what is right and to know what is wrong. So the whole system of democracy is based on this idea that it doesn't matter who you are an ordinary citizen, but you can still make the right choice if you think logically, if you think rationally. You have this particular ability. And that's the reason why, as I said, just gonna go back here. That's the reason why, as I said, that they choose their officers through this lottery system, and everybody can participate because everybody has the intelligence of choosing what is right and what is wrong. So that would be fundamental principle number one. Fundamental principle number two, which is very, very important, is that the idea that the citizens can focus on the common good versus their personal good, the common interest versus the personal interest. So they believe that you as a person, not only you are rational and capable of making the right decision, but also under certain circumstances, you will realize that the good of the city, the common interest, is much more important than your personal interest, which is something that I think today it's very, very difficult to handle, because imagine, like, you have a house and they will construct a new highway next to your house, and you will say, I don't like that. I mean, it's going to be noise and it's going to be so many cars and that destroys my whole life. But it's good for the city. It's good for the people. So they thought and they believed that the Athenians would be able to disregard their self-interest when that self-interest comes in conflict with the common interest. So they will put the city and they will put the society above themselves, above their personal interests. An example for this particular attitude is that Plato says the problem with democracy is that if you give the power to these people, they will turn against the rich and they will accuse them and they will destroy them. But that never happened in Athens. Even if they had the power to destroy the rich, they never did that. And the Athenians were very, very proud of that there is justice, there is not vindication or anything like that from the group of people who are in the city. So you can see the judge swore an oath that they will be impartial and things like that. So that's the second principle. Now, another interesting thing is that the Athenians believe that the citizens of the city of Athens would prefer to decide for themselves instead of having somebody else decide for them, which is what happens today. So today you say, I don't know, I'm not experienced in this particular area, I will delegate somebody to take the decision for me. That would be something that for the Athenians would be the most irrational, the most illogical thing that you could do. They will say, you prefer instead of you taking a decision about yourself to delegate that decision to somebody else? Why? Because he's considered to be an expert? But it has nothing to do with expertise. It has to do with common sense. So for them to participate in the decision making, it's a very important aspect of their type of government. Like everybody is not only willing, but it's part of their identity, part of their way of thinking to participate in politics. They will never allow somebody else to do that for them. So that's fundamental principle number 3. Number 4, very, very important, because in order to be able to decide about a certain issue, you need to be informed about this particular issue. And they thought that this is something that you can do, and this is something that you should do, both these things, that there is a capability in a democratic system to have this information available for everybody so they know the facts. And that's something that they will really focus a lot in the government. Everything, pressing the wrong button here, but I want to highlight this point here, that everything had to be published. They publish everything because that's how you become informed, and that's how you can make the right choice. That's how you can make the right decision. If information is hidden from you, you won't be able to make the right decision. So the whole principle of you being able to exercise your common sense to take the right decision is based on the facts that you know. And these facts should be available to you. And so they had, a legal system which was available to the public for inspection. So you know what is the law. You cannot claim in the city of Athens that I had no idea what the law says. Well, the law is posted in more than one public locations, and everybody walks by and they can read that. So you can't really claim that I didn't know. That's the last principle. And this one kind of relates to the previous discussion, because the question here is, do I have to be an expert to be able to decide what is right and what is wrong for me in terms of, let's say, financial things, let's say my pension? How do I know what's the best plan for me? They thought that they are both important, expertise and also common sense. And they had people who would be more qualified to present specific theses or specific arguments. However, the fact that there are certain people who have a certain expertise and they present a plan, that doesn't eliminate your participation in the decision making. So they accepted, they acknowledged that there might be people who are more, let's say, qualified to offer an opinion about something or to offer a plan. And those will be professional politicians, because there are in the city of Athens professional politicians. These are people who have studied rhetoric. They have a very high education. They know politics, and that's what they do. They present political plans and political ideas. And if you are like a poor farmer, yeah, you probably don't have this particular ability. But if you are a poor farmer, you still participate in the direct decision making, even if you are not an expert on a specific issue. And of course, again, the emphasis on rationality and common sense is important there to make the the right decision. So to, to finish with this presentation, as I said, it's a very complicated topic. It's something that it's fascinating to study. It's something that historians and archaeologists and political scientists and sociologists, people from a lot of different fields, they try to understand, and we still learn a lot about the ancient Greek democracy. But what is fascinating to me is that there is a system here where equality is it's a reality. It's not just an idea where you are equal but you're not equal. You participate in the politics but you're not participating in the politics. It's a reality for them, and I think there are a lot of interesting things here which we can inspire us to look at our own democracies today and see maybe where we have led astray from these fundamental principles, these ideas. So I want to thank you for your attention, and feel free to ask any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating. Democracy is hard.
It is.
You started by saying in the 5th century BC, it was new and radical.
Yes.
Is there any name attached to the beginning of this new radical thing, or any philosopher, or how did it start?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. And what happens is, in Greece at that time, there is a revolution of ideas. It's not something that strictly has to do with politics, but in philosophy, we have movements that emphasize the rationality. The old world, which was more religious focused, changes into what we might call today a more scientific perspective. And there's a lot of development in sciences, for instance, mathematics, cosmology, medicine. So there is a lot of advancement in these scientific approaches. For instance, just to give you an example, there is this idea that existed since the ancient times in different civilizations, that epilepsy is a sacred disease. This is the name they use for epilepsy, because it was strange. They couldn't really understand somebody's falling under an epileptic seizure and they can't find the cause. So they were thinking there is a god, or there is a demon, or there is a supernatural cause. And one of these Athenians at that time, whose name should be very familiar to you, Hippocrates, the father of scientific medicine, writes a book. And the title of this book is On the Sacred Disease. And basically what he says there is that there is nothing sacred about this disease. There is a natural cause. And we might not know the cause, but that doesn't make it like a supernatural occurrence. So you have this revolution of ideas throughout Greece, but mostly in the city of Athens, because the city of Athens will be the center of all these philosophers and intellectuals, where there is emphasis on rationality. And of course, democracy will be one way they look at things, trying to eliminate all kind of metaphysical perspectives, because and I know I can go on and on about that, but for instance, these elites, these aristocratic families, they are special because they relate to the old heroes from classical mythology. So they can say, Theseus, the legendary king of Athens who killed the Minotaur, was my ancestor, and I'm important. And the new rationalistic system will say, it doesn't matter, we're all human beings, so we all have the same capability. It's not, doesn't, if you have a legendary ancestor, that doesn't make you more special than me, or more privileged, or more gifted. So, yes.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I have a request and then a comment. I did not think to bring a pen and pencil to write down some of those principles that you posed for us, which I thought were extremely interesting. So the request is, would you make those 5 slides available, Sheila, so that we
Yes,
can...
I send you the whole presentation.
I very much appreciate
I
that.
will send that to Sheila and she can distribute that. Yeah.
And the comment is that you asked early on whether any of these 5 principles are familiar to us or would work in today's representational democracy in the United States. And I see some similarities in many of the 5, but the second one in particular, I think we've lost the ability to do for the common good instead of personal interest, especially with our 2-party system, where you have to do the cater to the base and you have to worry about getting reelected. And so what you do is you take political positions based on how you can get reelected rather than for the common good.
Yes.
I think we've lost the ability to do that.
Yes. And, just something interesting. Whenever I have this lecture with my students in my classes, I always ask them, which of these 5 principles you think that doesn't apply today? You cannot see it today. And they all say the same thing, like you said, we cannot, overlook our personal interest for the common interest. So I think that's, there's a reality to that. So
Mohini, do we have any questions online? Okay, let's see if I can see it or Chris can see.
yes, let's see.
Okay. Can you read it, Chris?
Yes, this is I'm answering the question of Rick. So this is a very interesting question, and it's something that it's still under research. We don't have all the information about literacy in ancient Greece. There are different arguments. There are people who argue that literacy was very widespread, and there are also people who argue that literacy was limited. And, I think this is a very important point, because when I mentioned before that, information circulates in the city of Athens, you can simply say, how many people can read? I mean, the law might be posted on this public forum, but how many can read? It's a complicated question. I do not have the answer for that, but we know that their educational system emphasizes reading, writing, arithmetic, mathematics, music, and gymnastics. How widespread was that? I think my personal opinion was that it was quite widespread, but there are scholars who don't agree, and they will argue for limited literacy in the city of Athens. So I think that's a very good question. I'm not able to give you a definite answer, because there is no definite answer. It's something that there is ongoing research on that.
I should have read the question because the print is small. What did the Athenians during this period expect from their educational system or traditions? They seem to have assumed that all adult citizens were literate. How did they try to develop citizens with the basic skills to use common sense in decision making? Okay, well, I would like to thank you, Chris, for a really clear and interesting presentation on how the Greeks invented this unique new form of government and what it looked like. I found myself learning things. But particularly, I liked that it was a thought-provoking talk in that it led us to start comparing, as you've heard from a couple of questions, of, what it is we do now and whether there are things we could do that were different or better, or et cetera. So really, thank you ever so much. Appreciate it.
Very much. Thank you very much.